So the interesting thing in Europe right now, we're seeing a lot of activity in WiMAX, especially in Ireland, Italy as well, but Ireland's a good example. They're now at approximately 10,000 subscribers, and they're adding about 200 or 300 subscribers per day. So the take-up, especially in that relatively small market, has been remarkable. They've actually they're adding subscribers at a rate of about 3x what they originally expected per their business plan. And the terrific thing is the incumbent, who historically has kept competition out of the market through charging very high line rental for the existing copper infrastructure, what 802.16e's allowed Imagine to do, Imagine being the carrier in Ireland with nationwide 3.5, what WiMAX has allowed them to do is basically bypass the line rental restriction and deploy a fast mobile broadband service to customers, and again, a huge pent-up demand there. The interesting stat about Ireland, even though it's Western Europe, 20% of the households were still using dial-up as their primary method of internet access. And you know, when's the last time any of us have ever used dial-up? It's not a very good user experience, especially to do any kind of rich video media consumption. It's intrinsically broken for that, and yeah. And even the copper infrastructure has been severely neglected. There's virtually no coax in the whole country, no fiber to speak of outside of just the center of the major metro, 2 or 3 metro areas. So it's a phenomenal opportunity. Kind of WiMAX is the perfect solution at the right time, and that's one of the reasons they're having, Imagine is having such terrific take-up. As I mentioned earlier, 70% of their new customers also take a voice line. It's a VoIP line, obviously, over 802.16e. And a lot of the CPE so far has been Motorola, but Imagine's also expanding that to other vendors as well. The interesting thing about that, 70% of the voice, of the subs taking voice is, of course, then they're dropping the incumbent service altogether. So Imagine is able to, offer not only broadband, broadband internet access, but also, of course, VoIP, and they're also using the build-out to basically finance the future build-out of a full mobility network. So they're using 16E today primarily as a fixed line replacement, fixed line broadband replacement, or even bringing broadband to places where it historically hadn't been available, especially outside the metro area. And they're using the build-out, basically it's, they're paying for the future build-out for mobility using the fixed line replacement, so they've designed the network in a clever way where you can go back and basically augment, the number of base stations to give the subscribers more mobility going forward as well. And they currently have a dongle offer. Basically, the dongle is an add-on to your CPE package that you take for a relatively modest amount. It's about $7, $8 a month extra on top of the basic service package. And then we're looking to launch embedded 3.5 notebooks in Ireland in the second half. Italy's another good example for Western Europe. Italy has been another country, again, much larger than Ireland, about 70 million people. A few tidbits about Italy I think that are interesting. Italy was actually the first country in the world where notebooks passed desktops, notebook PCs passed desktops in terms of the user purchase behavior. And obviously Italy has always had a very high mobile phone penetration. They've been well over 100% now for 6-7 years. Yeah, it's been severely neglected. Yeah, no coax again in the whole country. No fiber to speak of, although there was an interesting thing in the paper just a week or two ago. Telecom Italia's competition, on the fixed line side, a bunch of folks got together and they put together a $3 billion plan to pull fiber into cities in Italy. It's an interesting plan, but again, the dynamics in Italy are such that it's going to be very difficult to pull fiber into some of these, towns that are, 1,000 years old. It just precludes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, really, with the wireless deployment.
It's good question. I think it's a response to WiMAX and the success. There's 2 WiMAX operators in Italy. Linkem is doing particularly well. Linkem is a hotspot provider. They started in the 802.11 business, offering Wi-Fi hotspots in public areas like airports.
How do you spell that?
Linkem, L-I-N-K-E-M.
Just like that.
Yep. And Linkem's done a great job, and again, they've rolled out a 16E network and adding subscribers at a very rapid rate. not just in metro areas, but also covering the suburban areas outside major cities as well. ARIA is another interesting provider in Italy. They have nationwide 3.5. Again, Italy is all 3.5 gigahertz, of course. ARIA is another interesting operator. They have nationwide 3.5 spectrum, and they've covered parts of Umbria and more rural areas. They started the business similar to the Imagine structure of going out and offering a fixed line replacement, and even bringing broadband connectivity into areas of Italy that historically had nothing. Even dial-up wasn't available in some cases for a lot of the folks in the countryside. So taking those two examples, I think they're sort of the high points, if you will, of WiMAX 16E in Europe, just given the poor infrastructure. There's other examples, of course, in Europe, but again, primarily all 3.5, given that 2.5 is only available on a very limited basis. The EU has mandated that all EU member states should open up 2.5 within, by the end of, I believe it's in the next 5 to 6 years. So you'll probably see increasing 2.5 auctions happening in Europe in the next 3 to 5 years. The other interesting market, of course, is Japan. We have an investment in UQ Communications along with KDDI and a couple of other companies in Japan. UQ is adding subscribers at a phenomenal rate. They're up to 80,000 subs now, I believe, even in excess of that. They have over 20 different models of notebooks and netbooks available with embedded WiMAX. And they've got actually one of the fastest 16E networks deployed today. They're seeing well in excess of 10 megabits per second downlink and over 2 megabits per second in the uplink. So it's creating a very high profile user, very high bandwidth user case study there. And the demand in the Japanese market's been incredible. We had originally forecast a much more modest demand, given that there was a very high penetration of 3G, HSPA, and even HSPA Plus in Japan. But WiMAX has been able to offer a compelling value proposition through the excellent work that UQ and KDDI have done, and I think that's one of the reasons for their success. A lot of enterprise focus, of course, in Japan as well. A lot of small businesses are using WiMAX as their primary mechanism for communications. The other interesting thing is, devices that I talked about earlier, like these little, mini mobile hotspots, are catching on fairly rapidly in Japan as well. The interesting thing, of course, about the mobile hotspot is, it all of a sudden changes the game a little bit as well, because you're no longer just talking about the WiMAX device ecosystem. You all of a sudden, through WiMAX Wi-Fi, you've got access to the, close to 800 million, I guess it'll be 1 billion Wi-Fi enabled devices pretty soon. And then, of course, North America, we already talked a lot about, Clear and the terrific progress that they're making, over 1 million subs now. They added more WiMAX subscribers in the first quarter than they did all of 2009, so pretty remarkable. The one area we didn't touch on earlier was their wholesale subs. They've tripled the number of wholesale subs as of Q1. So terrific job, I think, not only by Clearwire, but also by Sprint and their cable partners to really turn up the speed of deployment and really deliver a very compelling service. Sprint's done a phenomenal job, in particular in marketing. As you probably saw on the television here in Honolulu, Sprint ads are, print and TV ads are fairly apparent here in Honolulu as they advertise, the Sprint 4G service. And I think that's indicative of the value proposition they're bringing not only here but across the United States. So it's interesting. I mean, there's different ways to interpret the data, of course. I haven't been there recently myself, so I'd probably defer to the details to my colleagues on the ground there. But you probably saw in the news recently, even the Vodafone CEO the CEO of Vodafone India came out and said, yeah, it looks, based on a cost-benefit analysis, if you take all the religious debate out of it, WiMAX is a good solution. And he actually came out and said, Vodafone India may very well deploy WiMAX in India, which is a pretty remarkable statement coming from one of the largest 3G LTE camps in the world. And I think it just demonstrates that if we look at this as a pragmatic business issue to go out and meet the needs of our customers today, operators will make a decision to deploy, WiMAX in the near term because the demand is already here. So there is, of course, there is a lot of other, things going on in India. I mean, there's different scenarios going on about, possibly delaying things and so forth. But I think it'll turn out in a very interesting way. I mean, the 3G auctions are actually still going on, as you know, and we expect those to, finish up in the next couple of weeks. And then the BWA auction will begin. I believe it's, within a few days of the end of the 3G auction. But so far, at least the demand for 3G spectrum has been, fairly incredible there. So E-Enhance is a real exciting development. Basically, what we did is, working with the rest of our ecosystem partners, is take a number of features that already existed in 16E and basically just pull those forward in such a way where we got the base station side of the equation and the device side of the equation working together to take advantage of the capabilities that already existed within the 16E spec. So really what it does, it's really an alignment of the ecosystem client to the network side that makes sure you're taking the utmost advantage of the capabilities that already existed in 16E. Now you can kind of think of it in a way, it doesn't break anything. You can think of it to a certain extent like a Wi-Fi access point. You might have B, G, N clients operating at different rates off the same access point. And really what's going to happen when 16E Enhanced becomes more ubiquitous later this year, you'll have devices that will be able to connect to the network at essentially twice the peak data rate of normal, previous 16E clients. But again, the previous clients will still work, similar again to the way that an access point would connect to older variants of Wi-Fi. You still get a connection, but you don't get the high-speed connection that you'll get with the newer clients that are tuned specifically to take advantage of the full feature set that 16E provides. So again, I guess the important thing is it's not a new standard. It's really not even an extension of 16E. It's really just taking advantage of the capabilities that already existed. And of course, specifically, it includes things like downlink beamforming, which is particularly advantageous at the cell edge. Beamforming gives you slightly better coverage, especially at the edge of the network. And clients, subscribers at the edge of at the cell edge will actually see about a 50% average improvement in performance. And again, that coupled with the peak, the doubling of the peak data rate, really essentially turbocharges 16E and makes it, I think a much more viable solution to meet the incredible demand. And this in large part was driven by the huge demand that operators like Clear and Yoda are seeing in their markets, and EQ as well. I think as one of the speakers earlier mentioned, Yoda's starting to see now 12, 13 gigabytes per month per subscriber. So they were very supportive of, tuning 16E, if you will, to really take advantage of all the performance features that already existed within the standard. And I think this overall provides a nice bridge, to the future. We're able to enhance 16E in such a way where it's going to, do a better job of meeting, the dramatic, surge in data consumption that we've seen, mobile data consumption that we've seen, and also, provides a bridge to the future for future technologies like 802.16m. I mean, today we try to take a very pragmatic, approach to the business. Operators that need a 4G solution today, obviously WiMAX is here now with 16E Enhanced. They're going to get even better performance, and it's a very low cost solution relative to what you can deliver into the market. A very flat IPR structure that promotes competition and really drives down pricing. So we're very excited about WiMAX, and we see it being incredibly successful not only in emerging markets but in developed markets in the coming years. LTE of course will happen. Intel is very much aware of that. We see WiMAX and LTE coexisting. And we see in the next couple of years as the LTE ecosystem evolves, LTE will grow and the number of subscribers will grow. Holistically, we think this is good, for the overall 4G ecosystem. We as Intel want to see faster mobile broadband connections because again, our primary business is at the, the endpoint, the client devices at the end of the network, and to really, enable the kind of user experience that we want to see our customers have. Customers of those devices have, they really need a fast mobile broadband connection. So we're obviously very excited about WiMAX today. It's here. It's delivering a very compelling value proposition at a very low cost to operators and customers. And we recognize that going forward in time, LTE and TD-LTE will also be part of the 4G universe. That said, I think we all know that it'll take some time. The WiMAX ecosystem has been under development now for a number of years, and we're now just at the point where we're getting a rich assortment of embedded devices, CPE clients, dongles, and other devices. But again, that took several years to come together, and we expect similar dynamics to take place in the LTE ecosystem as well. Yeah, Globe is a perfect example. I mean, today Globe runs 3G, HSPA, Wi-Fi, WiMAX, and I think there might even be one or two others in there, but they deploy different technologies to meet different needs. Philippines is an interesting market, just given the thousands of islands that they had to cover, and they did a very comprehensive analysis, and they found 802.16e to be the most cost-effective technology to cover those outlying areas. And they're still using obviously 2G and 3G to cover the major metro areas, but and they expect to roll out LTE also in the major metros, but they'll keep WiMAX for the non-urban areas, especially to cover the challenging geography that they have.